Hello again, everyone. You're listening to another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. My name is Jeff Mix. I'm head of content and research. My guest today is Nick Balster of Dalkia Energy Solutions. We're going to be having a conversation about decarbonization, especially as it relates to existing infrastructure, existing buildings. I think this is going to be a great conversation. Nick, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't we start off with what we're actually going to be talking about? Because decarbonization has many forms. What specifically are we going to talk about today?
I'd like to talk about enterprise decarbonization, so decarbonizing at scale and the kind of scale that people can wrap their head around. So I like to think about decarbonizing in New York City, and New York City specifically because there are 1 million buildings there. People can get their head wrapped around 1 million of something.
So when we're talking about existing infrastructure, existing buildings, and making them more energy efficient or other ways of reducing their carbon impact, what are some of the things that you would flag or highlight as opportunities?
So opportunities in the built environment include things like lighting systems and controls systems and HVAC systems, the kinds of things that drive energy consumption, make spaces lit and conditioned for people to spend time inside them, and the types of things that people don't often see or interact with, but they feel when they're inside a building. So when you walk into a building and begin interacting with it, you're going to immediately notice that energy has been transformed, and you feel a warmth or a cool breeze in the summer or winter, and you'll note that the air is being manufactured for your benefit, as an example, and that is consuming energy. And in many of those 1 million buildings in New York City, that is being done in antiquated fashion and very inefficiently. And so the types of things that can be done in order to make those buildings more efficient vary wildly depending on the building type, but there are many, many things that can be done to make them more efficient.
Okay, well, why don't we get into what your group does to help organizations that have infrastructure all over the country or all over the world actually make some concrete choices about how they want to reduce their carbon footprint, optimize the energy use they're seeing in their facilities. How do you help?
Yes, sure. So, the first thing I'd say really is to benchmark baseline. How do you know if something is efficient or inefficient if you don't have a good baseline or benchmark? So we help organizations understand where their building fits in the spectrum of building energy consumption on a per square foot or per unit basis. The next thing we might look at is what those existing assets that are consuming energy are consuming from an energy intensity perspective, and help understand where that fits versus more modern equipment. We might begin to think about understanding from the customer's perspective what's important to them. Is it important that sustainability goals are driving? Are they looking for cost savings? Are they looking for more comfortable spaces? What are the key indicators for their spaces that they really want to drive the decision? And that's a very collaborative discussion around what types of solutions make sense across their building, across their portfolio, and we begin engaging in preliminary engineering and the like to really drive the process forward and help understand more of what the procurement process would look like and how they intend to make decisions.
Now, how much of what you do is sort of weighing pros and cons of new equipment purchases? You're replacing old pumps, you're replacing old fans, you're replacing old lighting systems. How much of it is software where you're monitoring energy usage and like moving usage around? Is it a balance of things? What is the approach?
That's a great question. And sadly, the answer is it depends. So it largely depends on things like building type, existing infrastructure, existing control systems, and the like. So take a specific case. There are things called building management systems. These are the brains that control the room that we're in and how well conditioned it is, the lighting that we're experiencing, and how all of those things are controlled when we walk into the space. That can be programmed and controlled however the operators of this hotel that we're in want it to be. Very frequently, those types of systems are not managed very well. And so we might choose to manage that system better as opposed to just replace it. So there are opportunities to check on the existing systems, commission them or recommission them, and use what's there, what's existing, as opposed to automatically retrofit or upgrade the system. So we're not always looking for replace. We, in fact, very frequently look for optimize first and then seek to replace if optimization is not a preferred path.
Now, when I try to imagine the scope of this, because I mean, we're talking about 1 million buildings, I don't think there's any one expert or executive at a company who can flip a switch and make these kind of granular decisions. There has to be delegation, there has to be partnerships. Can you walk us through that part of it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. 1 million buildings is an understandable number, but it's an incomprehensible number at the same time. I've read estimates that in the United States there are roughly 250,000 HVAC technicians that are in need in order to accomplish the kind of HVAC work that's required in the built environment to perform. So that kind of deficit poses all kinds of issues from a comfort, from an efficiency, from a maintenance and operations perspective, and that's just one facet of a building. There are other facets that also pose challenges, but the trades and trained technician populations across the United States are in short supply. So now cast a gaze on the built environment and those 1 million buildings, and finding qualified people to perform that type of work is a challenge. So identifying partners that are able to address those kinds of needs is similarly a challenge. So you've got to identify partners that have a programmatic approach to solving these kinds of problems, that have a track record and a resume of being able to scale these kinds of opportunities and roll out these types of programs so that you're not left with these types of opportunities lingering for a decade and not seized at the end of that type of time period.
Now, I have to think the utility companies themselves are a major piece of all this, because there have been incentives going back for years that they want you to be more energy efficient. They want you to look at, what appliances maybe you put in the 60s and 70s when, hey, it's got to work was the important thing, and efficiency hadn't been thought of yet. And of course, we now have things that work better and more efficiently. Can we talk about that part of it?
Absolutely. So across the country, we work with utilities, both electric and natural gas, and billions of dollars every year are set aside of ratepayer funds. So every kilowatt hour that's consumed, every therm of gas that's consumed has a small adder that is paid into a fund, and those funds are only recouped if companies participate in the incentive programs. Else it's a tax on those kilowatt hours consumed and those therms of gas consumed.
And of course, this is all going to go back into paying for some of these upgrades and improvements. I mean, it sort of pays for itself over time because you're investing in being more efficient.
That's exactly correct. So there are really three cash flows in any of these projects. There's the customer paying a service provider partner. there is the service provider partner paying for equipment necessary to bring into a project, and there's a utility paying an incentive into a project in order to improve project returns. So those three flows make for great projects. The program funds vary across the country, but service providers should absolutely be in tune with where those funds are the ripest, and customers should hold to account those service providers to make sure they're getting absolutely the best opportunities and looks at the program incentive dollars in every project that they're doing, no matter the type. And they are really a phenomenal way to make programmatic rollouts successes across the country.
I'd love to put it in the perspective of some of our listeners. I think a lot of people who will be consuming this content have sustainability as part of their portfolio. Maybe they have sustainability in their job title. Maybe they're in operations. Maybe they're in building maintenance. Who's to say? But they're hearing this. They're saying, this is something that I can do in my own operation. What does getting started look like? How does Dalkia Energy Solutions become part of working the problem? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we could speak on, a cluster of facilities. We could talk about portfolios of buildings. Inevitably, it starts with one, right? And it builds on one. It takes one open-minded person to look at one facility that has one utility company and has one underperforming system or building type that we want to take a look at, and building on that one, we can form the start of a partnership. We can take a look at where else we might be able to help someone.
And of course, I have to think, once you're actually in a partnership with somebody, you're getting to know their organization, you're getting to understand where there might be wastage and just opportunities to do better with energy usage. Can you expand upon that?
Absolutely. What our job one is really to articulate what our mission is, what our objective is for our customers, and then to ask a lot of questions and better understand what challenges our customers are facing, what their objectives are, and begin to collaborate on what a set of solutions looks like for them and with them. So we very much view our role in a partnership as value-added contributors, and we want to make sure that we are bringing that value to a partnership in the best way possible. And that has everything to do with attentive listening and making sure that we are absolutely in tune with the mission and objectives of our partner customers, making sure that we're delivering on our commitments.
We've covered a lot of ground in this conversation. Is there one or two key takeaways you want people to think about a little further after listening to this?
I think beginning with the end in mind, visualizing success and tracing from that outcome to where they are today is a place to start. The second point is a lesson that I learned early in my career, and I think it applies here. It's something that I think has been reinforced at this conference, and it's this. The greatest sin that you can commit is not asking for help when you need it. I've met and heard from people here that are reaching across company lines and asking for help from their colleagues and identifying sustainability best practices in a way that I can't imagine having happened 10 years ago. And it's some of the most powerful, cool stuff that I've seen done in the industry. I think it's really inspiring.
That's great. So for people who do want to reach across lines, collaborate, learn a little bit more, what's the best way to get in touch?
LinkedIn, definitely. Reach out to me. LinkedIn is the best way, and look forward to connecting with anybody that got anything out of this.
All right. Well, I always am just so grateful when someone does say LinkedIn, because I think that puts you in touch with the individual you've been listening to. So, Nick, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
You've been listening to another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint Podcast. I've been Jeff Mix. Let's do it again soon.